We want to continue our analysis now of last night's Democratic debate. First, let's take a look at some of the key moments in case you missed them.
Joe and I listened to what Dick Cheney and George Bush and Rumsfeld had to say. I thought they were lying. I didn't believe them for a moment. I took to the floor. I did everything I could to prevent that war. Joe saw it differently.
We just found out today that 4 Republicans are joining Democrats to go to him and say you must have an authorization of military force if you're going to go to war with Iran.
What we are hearing is 20 years of mistakes by the American government in the Middle East.
The two great foreign policy disasters of our lifetimes were the war in Vietnam and the war in Iraq. Both of those wars were based on lies.
I think he's flat out lied about saying the reason he made the strike was because our embassies were about to be bombed.
If our troops can summon the courage to go overseas into harm's way, often on deployment after deployment, then we've got to make sure that Congress has the courage to take tough up or down votes on whether they ought to be there.
Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. How could anybody in a million years not believe that a woman could become president of the United States?
Look at the men on this stage. Collectively, they have lost 10 elections. The only people on this stage who have won every single election that they've been in are the women, Amy and me.
Just to set the record straight, I defeated an incumbent Republican running for Congress.
When?
1990. That's how I won, beat a Republican congressman. Number two, of course, I don't think
the Affordable Care Act right now is 10 points more popular than the President of the United States.
Health care is a human right. Every other major country on earth is guaranteeing health care for all. The time is long overdue for us to do the same.
You know, I was a single parent, too. When my wife and daughter were killed, my 2 boys I had to raise, I was a senator, a young senator. I just hadn't been sworn in yet. And I was making $42,000 a year. I could not afford, but for my family, child care.
If our Republican colleagues won't allow those witnesses, they may as well give the president a crown and a scepter.
Democratic strategist and CBSN political contributor Lynda Tran is joining us now from Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to talk about the issues. We kind of talked about some of the antics and stuff earlier. I want to talk with you about the issues. I want to ask you about some of the key issues that, Democratic voters have said that they're really interested in. 2 of them, health care and climate change. They came up on the debate stage as well. How did the candidates handle them?
Well, first off, health care is a long continuation of the discussion that has happened in every single debate up until last night. As we know, Anne-Marie, there's been a split in terms of those who are farther on the left who want a much more expansive and ambitious overhaul of the nation's healthcare system, and those more towards the center, the Pete Buttigieg's and Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, on the question of practicality and the scale of the ambition being in line with what they believe is achievable over the coming years. And that topic came up last night. In particular, there was a clash between Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete Buttigieg over the scope of his plan. So that was something that is very much in line with what we've been hearing and the divide that we've seen in previous Democratic debates. Mm-hmm. On climate change, things got significantly more interesting. Not only were there a number of questions that were directed at the candidates over what they felt like needed to be done. You heard Tom Steyer saying things like he believes, he's the only one that believes that there should be a state of emergency declared over climate change from day one. But what was most interesting to me is that far before we even got to that line of questioning, all of the candidates did their level best to inject climate change into some of the earlier discussion. You heard Bernie Sanders talking about climate change as it relates to trade deals. You heard others talking about justice and the impact on communities of color and relating that to climate change. So it was clearly top of mind for everybody that was on stage last night.
Mm-hmm. And I think a third really big topic was obviously foreign policy, keeping in mind the tensions between the U.S. and Iran. What do candidates have to say about that?
Well, what was interesting is this was a leading question for the debate last night for viewers who weren't able to tune in. And while, of course, Iran is top of mind for people, it was much broader than that. It was about national security. It was about our role in the world. And it was a significant opportunity for individuals like Joe Biden to recall for people watching at home his longstanding experience as a statesman. And it was also a glimpse into some of the personal experience that Mayor Buttigieg had as a former member of the armed forces and the experiences that he saw there.
So there were no people of color on the stage. They didn't make the cut. How did the lack of minority candidates influence the issues that were discussed, or do you think it made a difference?
Well, there's no question that the very first debate that did not feature somebody from a community of color felt like it was creating a void. It was leaving a void for people watching back at home. There were issues that we had seen discussed in previous conversations that did not make it into the discussion last night. For example, immigration reform, which was something that Secretary Julian Castro had spoken a lot about. There was not a great deal of discussion around criminal justice reform, which was something that Cory Booker and others had really spent some ample time speaking about. So the conversation certainly shifted in a way that it might not have if there had been those individuals on stage. That said, I always think it's really important to keep in mind that while the party diversity might not have been reflected on the stage, the issues of economic opportunity and those kinds of things that are critically important to communities of color were discussed and need to be top of mind as a priority for these candidates as they move forward.
So I want to remind everyone that, the candidates on the stage are not the only candidates running. They're the only ones that made the cut to get to the debate stage, but there are other candidates out there that are still campaigning. One of them is Michael Bloomberg, and he sort of spent, and his team spent the evening tweeting out sort of funny little jokes. I think he was also on Stephen Colbert as well. I'm sort of curious your take on the role of social media, and prior to this, the performance on the debate stage meant everything. But now it seems, some of these candidates may be able to stay alive even if they don't make the debate stage cut.
Well, being on the debate stage is still critically important. It's how you reach millions of viewers at once all around the country in a substantive and detailed way. So we can't undermine the importance of that. However, as you point out, Anne Marie, social media is so critically important as well. And it is in particular a way for the candidates to enable people around the country to feel like they're having a conversation with them, to feel like they are directly engaging with them. And also for somebody like Bloomberg, who wasn't able to be there in the midst of the brawl and discussion, it's a way to continue to remain top of mind for individuals as well. And for him, having a little bit of humor, being a little bit quirky, whether we're talking about the tweets or Colbert, was a way also to show people some of the personality that he has and get a glimpse of him that they may not have seen previously.
Yeah, very true. In fact, when it comes to Bloomberg, he's not even trying to make the debate stage. And his whole thing is, that's the great thing. I'm not beholden to anyone. I can pay my way through. You may not see me on the debate stage, but you'll see me a whole lot of other places. Lynda, thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you.